In this tutorial, we are going to see how to create this scene using the Reality plugin for DAZ Studio. This is a good exercise in creative lighting, trying to simulate an interior scene with a hint of moonlight. Now, it's important that we make a distinction between realism and realistic. If you watch a Hollywood movie, you'll see that the scenes are masterfully shot. There is an incredible amount of preparation in every shot that you see in a movie. Take this shot, for example, from the movie Domino. It seems that the light coming from the window is the sun. It isn't. It's a series of 10K lights shooting straight from the window, but they are controlled. They are actually artificial lights. So realism is one thing. Realistic is what we want to achieve. We don't want to be at the mercy of available lights. We don't want to just say, hey, this scene was supposed to be shot with the moon, so we have to wait for the moon to get in the right place. Most movies cannot be shot with real moonlight because the film will not be exposed to enough light to register. And so we use the same approach here in order to create an image. It's a difference between shooting a documentary and shooting a movie. We are interested in shooting movies in this case. Let's see how that is done. So if we look at the scene here, we seemingly have the interior light coming from these two lamps, and then there is a little bit of moonlight. I love this part here especially, that is coming from these windows reflected in the mirror. And by the way, this is a totally unretouched render. This is straight from Reality using LuxRender. No post-work whatsoever. So let's switch to Studio and see how that is done. So first of all, I want to show you how to do the lamps in here. Now in Studio, in the original scene, this is, by the way, the master bedroom from the dream home. It's extremely inexpensive set, and that shows how far you can go with a very modest budget and the Reality plugin. So let's switch to the other camera. I don't want to change my frame camera, and I'm gonna go to the perspective view and try to find my lamp again. Let me just show you a detail. All right, it looks like there is a sugar cube inside. The original material in Studio here is a transparent type of glass. When you add a light source like this, you want to use the minimum amount of polygons necessary, because the fewer the facets, the faster the render goes. So in this case, what I did is simply to put a cube in here, and I call that cube, let me just rearrange the space a bit, there you go, and I named that cube Reality Light 2. The Reality Light 1 is the other light in the scene. So let me just zoom out a second, and we frame it, and we can see that's the other cube in the scene. Okay, so Reality 1, Reality Light 1, Reality Light 2, and they are inside our lamps. Then, to avoid seeing a cube, I changed the material for the glass to be matte translucent, and the resulting light is what we see in the figure here. So we don't see the cube inside, but we do see a source of light, and it's quite beautiful. We can see all the reflections caused by these elements in the lampshade. So create a cube, you size it correctly, you put it inside the lamp, and name it Reality Light Plus, a suffix of your choice. As long as it starts with Reality Light, it will be used as a light. Now, these seem to be the only light sources inside. Actually, it's not quite that easy because there is no balance otherwise in the room. All the light will be coming from here, and we could see some reflections around, but we will be losing some detailing here. And so again, creative use of lighting. If we look around, and we can see there is a square up in the ceiling, and this is Reality Light 3. This is another area light. It's used just for fill. And then if I rotate a little more, it's a tiny room here, and we can see another square that is just behind the camera, and this is the Reality Light nightstand. I call it nightstand because the idea is that it projects some light to pick up the detail in here. Otherwise we would be missing this mesh here, which I wanted to capture. So these are the lights for the interior part. Now, how do we create the moonlight? Now, one of the things I saw when I prepared this scene was the nice frame for the windows. And generally, when you have a window frame, you want to use it because it always creates these nice elements in your scene. So let's go back, and I'll show you that I created 2 spots. I know the moon doesn't seem like a spotlight, but this is working just fine. So I created 2 spots, and I called the moon and moon 2. And now let me just frame those directly. Okay, now we can see them. This is moon and moon 2. So I can show you where they are in position relative to each other. These are the 2. And if I switch to moon point of view, I can see where I'm framing the building. Now I switch to moon 2, and this is my other frame. I can see that I'm projecting some light here. So these are the 2 spots. So we have basically the 2 nightstands, the fill light, a little bit of additional lighting for the detail on one of the nightstands, and other 2 spots for the moonlight. So let's switch back to our camera. This is our frame. This material is selected to be mirror. So let me just call reality, and I'll give you a quick run of the materials. So, for example, if we look at the matte translucent settings, these are for the bulbs, okay? So these are the 2 bulbs set to matte translucent. And in the translucency tab, we can see the current colors, same on both, plus they have the little texture. Now this is actually, if we take a look at the UV, this is actually the lampshade. The lampshade initially comes as glossy, but I thought that the matte translucent material is, by definition, basically a lampshade. This is the textbook application of what the matte translucent material should be used for. And I played a little bit with the parameters because I wanted to have a bit of translucency, a little bit of transparency. We do have an alpha map for this, so we can see from the image that in fact this is transparent. Now if you were to compare this version with the default glossy, you will see that this looks really more transparent in the glossy version. The matte translucent really adds kind of a hazy look to it that is more believable. So matte translucent, you play with a little bit with the parameters. The reflection parameter in the matte translucent is basically the color of the surface, and the transmission parameter is the color that is seen through. So a combination of all these elements plus the texture will give you that look. Initially will be a little washed out, and that's why I needed to bring these colors down a little bit. And the other thing I've done is to change the glass material, for most of them, to architectural, so that the windows will let the light through more easily. We don't see much of the windows, we just see a bare reflection in the mirror. So using architectural will speed things up and will make the render better. In this case, in other cases, you might want to use just the non-architecture, which is very realistic, or even the hyper-realistic. One thing that you want to check with the glass material is always the color that you're using for the reflection transmission parameters. Many times these colors come through from Studio, and the transmission color is set to something dark. If you don't change it, you'll end up with basically black glass. Be sure that you have this color fairly clear or even completely white. And once you do that, you can just generate the scene. I turn this material to gold. This is gold, this is copper. Let me show you here in metal. So we have the bed one metal. So this is gold, a 9700 polish, and if we look at the lamp metal, this is copper at 8856. Same for this. So the copper becomes this part here. This is the gold. You see that it's kind of a hammered look. This is what the bump mapping does. So if we look at the lamp 2 metal gold, and here in the modifiers we have our bump mapping. Now we can lower it if we want, but I kind of like the look. I think it goes very well with the copper. So the final touch is created by the rendering parameters for the lights. So now we are switching to the lights tab, and here in the nightstand is the light that is basically lighting this part here. I set the power about 10 watts. The two lamps are about 20 watts each. The fill light is on the one at the top of the ceiling. It's a 44 watts about. And then we have our two spots for the moon. So this is our starting point, and now we need to do some other adjustments inside Lux while the image is rendering. And let me switch to Lux, and this is the scene that I just reloaded, and we can see the tone mapping. I set it to sensitivity of 250 ISO. It's an exposure of 1/30th of a second, and we have a f4 for our f-stop. I added just a touch of a lens effect. Cannot see it right now here, but it's basically added in the bloom, and probably just 0.10 or 0.15. Now my temperatures for the lamps are important. So the gain is being lowered significantly for both of them, and this gives me the ratio for the moonlight and the interior lights. But you notice I warmed up the lamps here for the interior lights. So from the standard 65K, I went down to 3514, which is bringing the light a lot warmer. We can move the slider a little bit, and you see the difference. So anywhere around 32, 35 will do it. Really, adjust to your liking. And the moon, starting, this is at 9789. It started at 6500, and will be kind of whitish. And we just move it to the colder side of the spectrum so that it looks kind of bluish, and that's generally what gives us the atmosphere of the moon. And of course, you can adjust it to your liking. I wanted to pick up enough detail on this side here because there is a little hint of other structures, a little bit of the shadow from this side of the bed. So it's really nice and adds a little more detail, even though the wall is bare. So this is basically how you create this scene. I hope the tutorial was informative. My name is Paolo Ciccone for Pret A 3D, 3D Ready to Wear. See you next time.